Hello, my name is Myra, and for today's video, I want to go ahead and talk about all the books that I read in July and August. Now, I know I probably look just a little bit oily and maybe I look glowy, but it's just kind of a little bit of sweat and oil because it's currently 90 something degrees here in California and it is hot, hot, hot. I turned off the air so that you guys could hear me, so I will immediately be turning that on as soon as I'm done. But anyway, that's just to explain why I might look just a tad bit shiny. I do have my notebook here because my memory is horrible and I will definitely forget. I'm also pretty bad at names, so I needed some sort of point of reference. So if you see me look down really quick, that's what I'm looking at. Now the first book was an audiobook. It's actually the first two books since it is a duet. And that was Perfect Villain and Beautiful Monster by J.L. Beck and S. Rena. Now this one I did rate a 3.5/4 star out of 5. It was okay. It is a mafia book, but it wasn't anything super memorable. And this one basically you do have Sean and Christian. So Sean, she basically ran away from her life at a very young age. She was part of the mafia, her family was killed, and so her and her nanny have been on the run since then. So pretty much she's using, secret identity, fake ID, stuff like that. Now she does have a stalker and she doesn't know who her stalker is, but this person has been stalking her pretty much almost since she ran away. And so she's gone from town to town, state by state, etc., etc. And when this book starts off, she has already been living in this town for like the past 5 years. She has a roommate that is her best friend. She's in a long-term relationship. And one night at a bar, her and her friend meet this really tall, good-looking guy named Christian. Now, she feels attracted to Christian, and Christian is very much kind of coming on to her, and she puts up kind of like a boundary just because she does, like I said, have a boyfriend who she's very much in love with, and so she basically wants to stay away from Christian. Now, what you do find out as a reader, and I don't really think it's a spoiler, is that Christian is her stalker. Okay, so she has no idea that he's her stalker, and this is a dual point of view, so that's how you find out right away from the beginning that he's her stalker, and the whole time, pretty much for like the majority, she has no idea that this is her stalker. And so things start to kind of go wrong in her life and things start happening here and there. Her stalker makes a reappearance, and who is there to save the day? Christian. But again, Christian is her stalker. She just doesn't know it. And so the whole time in the book, there's all these things going on and you don't know if she's gonna get caught. You get to see Christian's mind and it's a little bit twisted. I would definitely look up triggers for this. I didn't. I just kind of went in blind, but I would definitely look up triggers for this book. It's not considered like a lovey-dovey. He's pretty narcissist. He is also pretty violent. So I would say just look up triggers. Again, I rated this like a 3.5 to like a 4 star just because it was okay. It does have a lot of like mafia in it though eventually. And obviously I can't really talk too much about the second book because I don't want to spoil anything. But things hit the fan, like things start to really happen. And so it was free on Audible. So I would say if you do have Audible, it's a free read. So check it out on there. Okay, now the second book that I read, or I should say, I guess third book. This one, I think everybody and their mom has heard about it, and that is Fourth Wing. Now I did actually get really lucky. I found the really pretty one at Walmart, and I didn't know how rare these were to find, but I got lucky. So anyway, I'm just gonna pop a picture here so I don't have to hold it up the whole time, but I did read this book. Now it is a fantasy romance, and if you haven't heard about the book or know what it's about, I will let you know what it's about as quickly as I possibly can. So the book is told from Violet's point of view. So Violet is a young girl. She's in her 20s, early 20s, who has basically been training her whole life to become a scribe. A scribe, the best way I can describe it, is a historian. She's basically the one who keeps track of, for example, if a battle takes place, who fought, the casualties, etc. so that their people start to basically build up their history and they have records to look back on. Now, this is set in like medieval type times, which is why they do need scribes. There is no such thing as like internet, computers, etc. And so her whole life, that's what she's been training to do. That's where her dad was. And so that's what she thinks she's going to study in college. But her mom, very last minute, tells her, hey, you have 6 months to actually try to get as much training and practice and tips as possible, because I actually want you to try to become a dragon rider, just like myself, your brother, and your sister. And so she has no idea what to expect. That's not at all what she had planned. And she knows she can't argue with her mom about it. And so she goes into this basically whole new world, not knowing what to expect. But the bad thing about it is, now she does have a chronic illness, and so her joints, she has a lot of like issues with like her joints and her muscles. So she is a little bit more fragile in that way. So that is something that people kind of target her for, because they very much are of the mentality of like survival of the fittest, and they want the best of the best to become dragon riders, because if you're going to count on someone to kind of have your back, you need someone who's considered, you know, strong enough. And so she has that against her. Also, people absolutely hate her mom, because her mom is a general. She's a top general, actually. And a long time ago, there was a rebellion that took place, and her mom ordered the execution of everyone who rebelled in front of their kids. And those kids are now around Violet's age. And so now she's around all these other potential dragon riders or current dragon riders who absolutely hate her mom. And so in turn, they also hate her. And third, but of course, still a very bad thing, anyone there while you're training and you're trying to become eligible to be a dragon rider, you can basically murder each other. There's no rules against it. The only rule that there is that it can't be at night when everyone is, you know, going to sleep. Other than that, if you're sparring, you can get killed. I mean, you can be killed during training and practice. And so, and even dragons can deem you unworthy and kill you on the spot. And so now she has all these things that she's going through. And one of the guys that she sees who she's immediately attracted to is Xaden. And Xaden is pretty much the one that hates her the most, or so she thinks, because he is the son of the man who led that rebellion years ago and whose dad was also executed in front of him. And so this is a fantasy romance book. I loved it. I rated it a 5 out of 5 star. Now I am someone that, like, I was so curious because so many people kept talking really good about this book and like kept saying really good things, that I wanted to find those negative, like those people who didn't think really highly of it, just to kind of see where they were coming from. And I did see their points. Some of the people that I saw, they kind of shared the same reasons as to why they didn't like it, but I saw like one of the things that they didn't like was the fact that it wasn't very heavy on like the world building and the fantasy, which is actually something I really liked, because I'm very, very new when it comes to fantasy. And I think if it just had too much world building, I would have been like, you know what, this is too much, and I would have probably DNF'd the book. So that's one of the things that I heard people complaining about. They also didn't like the fact that they say that she reads really like immature, because she's thinking about, you know, physical adult activities all the time. I actually thought like it was fine. I thought it was funny. Another thing that I saw that people didn't like was the fact that like so many people die in the process of becoming a dragon rider. So they were saying like, oh, it kind of defeats the purpose. And I don't know, it was just like a bunch of little things that, I don't know, to me, it just like, I feel like it's just not that deep. Like, you know, it's fine. It was like a nice, quick, fast paced. One thing that even some of these people that didn't like the book did say that they actually enjoyed, and one thing that I definitely enjoyed as well, is that there is so much action. There's always something happening. And so you fly through the book like that. So if you haven't, I would definitely say give it a chance. Even if you've seen people that are like, I don't like it, I don't like it, just give it a chance, try it yourself, form your own opinion, and see what you think of the book. But I loved it. Now, what this book did though, was that it started this whole thing of like, what other fantasy romance books can I read? And so I dived into this series, and I think maybe you guys have seen it, maybe not. A Court of Thorns and Roses. I had been seeing this series everywhere. I actually had A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is the first book. I had this for probably just as long as I had this one. And this one, it took me almost like 3 weeks to even start reading it. So this one took me like a month and a half to actually start reading it. And I really wanted to like smack myself with the book because I was like, how is it that it took me this long to read this book? I thought this book was new. And it was published, I think, in like 2018. I was like, where have I been these past 5 years? Like, Myra, hello. Excuse me, but even my throat can't believe it. Like, what the heck? Anyway, if you haven't read them, it is A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I will have to give a little bit of spoilers just because or else I feel like I can't really review the books. But before I get into that, I will just quickly say my star ratings in case you want to skip ahead and you don't want to know what the books are about. I gave this first book 4 out of 5 stars. This second book, 5 stars. I gave this one 4 stars. This little baby one, 4 stars as well. And this one, I'm between a 4.5 and a 5 star. I'm just gonna say 5 star. It is a really, really thick book. But yeah, those were my ratings for the books. I am going to just pop a picture here so I don't have to keep holding them up. If you haven't read the books, skip ahead until this picture disappears. But the first book, obviously it's Feyre and Tamlin. So Feyre gets taken into these fairy lands because she kills a wolf, or it's either a wolf or a fox. I honestly can't remember. I think it's a wolf. But it's not a wolf. It's actually a fairy that was shapeshifted into a wolf. Now, she pretty much knew. She had a feeling it was a fairy, but humans and fairies hate each other. And so she kills it, sells the fur, and Tamlin, who is the High Lord of the Spring Court, ends up coming to Feyre's family's cabin and says, hey, I'm taking you prisoner. Like, I either kill you or I take you prisoner. And so he takes her prisoner, and now she has to be living at the Spring Court. Now, as time goes on, it started pretty slow for me because there is a lot of like fantasy in this book, especially comparing it to like Fourth Wing. So I was like, my God, like this is a lot. So it starts off a little bit slow. A lot of fantasy. They're explaining a lot about the world, a lot about the courts, and she's learning a lot about the fairies. And again, humans and fairies hate each other. Feyre is pretty much a big time hater of fairies. So she's seeing a whole different side of these fairies. And her and Tamlin, you know, fall in love, and she really loves him until he's taken captive, right? And that's where you meet Rhys. Now, for the longest time, I kept thinking that his name was Rhys, because R-H-Y-S. So I kept thinking like his name was Rice or like Rysand, but it's actually Rhys. Rhysand. I don't know. I found out about it because I was listening to the audiobook, like the excerpt of the audiobook, and I was like, I've been saying it wrong in my head this whole time. Anyway, that's where she meets Rhys. Now, I immediately was intrigued by Rhys at the end of this book because, you know, again, Feyre goes to try to help Tamlin. Things happen, and so you meet Rhys. Now, I was intrigued by him, and I was like, huh, this sounds very like interesting. Then when the second book came along, I was like, oh hell no, Tamlin, what the heck is your problem? Go Rhys 1000%. And so there is a lot of comparison here between Feyre, like kind of debating about, okay, I love Tamlin and he's done all these nice things for me, but do I just love him because he's like the first person to be really kind to me? And I could totally relate to that. Like as a woman, and I don't think you have to be a woman, but you could relate to that, you know, like someone is treating you really nicely, and so you think, oh my God, I'm in love, I'm in love, I'm in love. But then you kind of find out like this isn't love, like you're treating me horribly and there's actually someone way better, and you being nice to me doesn't excuse it. And so I fell in love with Rhys. I was Rhys and Feyre all the way. And then of course, again, spoiler, you find out that they're mates, and I was like, dude, there was like this whole other side of Rhys that I was like, oh my God, like he literally, like the sacrifice and everything that he went through for his people is just insane. I fell in love with Rhys right away. If I was single and somehow Rhys existed, I would definitely want him. And then with this one, of course, her sisters get dragged into it. Nesta was so mean. Nesta. Is it Nesta? Oh my God. Why am I forgetting? I literally just finished this book. Nesta, yes. Nesta was so mean. Like, she is so rude. But anyway, oh my God, excuse me. I got too heated. And this one, obviously, Nesta and Elain get dragged into it. They also become Fae. And then there's that whole plot twist that I did not see coming where Lucien, I hope I'm saying his name right, all of a sudden he's like, you're my mate. And I'm like, dude, it's your fault that she got dragged into this. She wanted to stay a human. Like, what's your problem? Anyway, a lot of things happen in that book too. And then you have this one, which was like the smallest, tiniest little book. This one was just like a holiday book, novella, whatever. It was cute. It was sweet. 4 stars. A lot of gift giving. It's kind of like their Christmas. I don't know. I thought it was cute. Okay. Then you have this one with Nesta and Cassian. I was like, sweet Jesus. Nesta goes through a lot, and she really, I think in my opinion, grew a lot as a character. A lot of people hate her. I don't blame them. I was like, dude, you are so mean. But honestly, I don't know. I think I'm also someone that can sometimes be or feel misunderstood by other people because I do have a very strong personality. And so I was like, oh my God, I can kind of get it. Like, the reason why you put up these walls is because not only do you have feelings, but your feelings are so deep and they mean so much to you that you have nothing but to put this really strong wall and just be mean to keep people out, because otherwise you risk basically being devastated. And she grows so much as a character. She helps other women grow so much and get their strength back after being in these like horrible scenarios and just horrible, despicable things that happen to them. And so I actually just really like grew to like Nesta after reading that book. And now in between, like I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, A Court of Mist and Fury, and then it was my birthday. So I kind of, you know, had a few days off there from reading. And then I read A Court of Frost and Starlight, A Court of Wings and Ruin. But then I went to the Taylor Swift concert and I was like, go Taylor, it's your birthday. Well, it wasn't her birthday. It was right after my birthday. But still, Eras Tour was so awesome. If you're a Swiftie, leave me the, you know, the 2-hand emoji. Fellow Swiftie, I get you. Sorry, that was so embarrassing. But anyway, a few days of recovering from the concert that like just completely blew my mind. That's when I finished this one. So really, in July, I pretty much read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books in July. Not a lot. It was a little bit. So anyway, now August. Really quick, we're going to fly through this. In August, I ended up reading Minx by Sophie Lark. I read it on Kindle Unlimited. I rated it at 3.5 to 4 star. It wasn't my favorite Sophie Lark book, and I actually am a huge fan of Sophie Lark, but it was something different. This one actually follows Ramses and Blake. Now, Ramses is this billionaire, like billionaire. And Blake is actually this like super high-end. Is it wrong to say high-end? I think it's okay to say high-end. But she's an escort. But she's an escort for billionaires. She's not, you know, an escort for just like, she's not someone that you can like easily afford her company. He literally, I think he spent like $3 million or paid her $3 million to go on a date with him, like a first date. So anyway, I thought it was really fun. It was a really nice quick read. I pretty much read it. I read it right before I read this one just to kind of get back into reading again. But it's called Minx because they actually have this thing where like she dresses up as a cat when they're, you know, participating in adult activities, but not in like a weird way. Like, I don't know how to explain it. You would really have to read the book. But I really liked it because they're both actually from really humble beginnings. They both came from like not a lot of money. And Blake actually is not only an escort, but she's also using her access to these really rich guys to also improve her own wealth and her own knowledge. And so it was just like a very like women empowering type of book. But again, I rated it like a 3.5 to 4 star. Like, it was okay. Then I went like the complete opposite direction, and I ended up reading Ice Planet Barbarians. Now, I read the first book, and this book, if you haven't seen it, I had seen it at like bookstores and stuff. I had seen it like at Target, at Walmart in the book section, and I was always really curious about it, but I just had never read it. And in this book, it starts off, I mean, action right away. This girl, she's sleeping, gets abducted by aliens, right? She's 22, and when she is abducted and she's on this spaceship, she wakes up and she's basically in a cell with a bunch of other girls, and they quickly find out that they all have very similar backgrounds, especially them being young 22-year-old women that are healthy. And so they don't know where they're going, they don't know why they were abducted, except one of the girls does have an earpiece that the aliens implanted in her ear, so that when they talk, she could be translating to them in English, and she could basically be like finding out, or at least telling the girls, hey, this is what they're saying. Now, these are described as like these 3 feet, you know, green men, green alien men, right? So they get abducted, whatever. Now, I would look up triggers just because there is a very like bad essay scene. Yeah, I would say look it up. Anyway, so now they end up getting dropped off in this random planet because the spaceship basically has no room for them anymore. And so she, or like the main character, Georgie, she ends up going out to find help. And she quickly sees like, okay, we're definitely not on Earth. We're on this ice planet that has 2 suns. And yeah, like we're not on Earth. Who knows where we are? And she ends up finding this man who, the best way I can describe it is like, picture Avatar. It's this huge blue man, okay? So obviously an alien. And she wakes up because he is between her privates, inspecting them and doing something to them. So it is a very, very smutty book. It's a quick light read. Definitely not really a plot. I rated it a 5 star for like smut. Like, it's very spicy, very smutty. I would say this is like the book for like a palate cleanser. You know, if you just kind of want to like read something quick, press the reset button. This was such a good book. Again, not very much of a plot, but a lot of smut. It's almost like an Omega type verse, like Omega verse type of book. So again, I rated it a 5 star just because it was smutty, it was fun, and it was a quick, nice read. Now, right after that, I read Taken by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. Now, this book, I read it, I rated it a 4 star. It is between Nicholas, who is 36, and Tess, who is 22. So Tess, basically, her mom ends up marrying into a retired Greek mafia, or like head of the Greek mafia. So now the head of the mafia now is Nicholas, who is her stepbrother, or soon to be stepbrother. Now, I know I was seeing like people are saying, oh, there is no such thing as a Greek mafia. I don't know, it's just fiction, it's okay. But anyway, so she is very attracted to her stepbrother, but you know, she doesn't think anything of it. She's like, you know what, whatever. And Nicholas, he's very ruthless. I mean, there's a lot of mafia, a lot of action in this book, and so he's very attracted to her, but he tells her, you know what, I'm gonna find someone for you to marry. And she's like, what the heck, like, no, you're not. And so she fights him a lot, and he's not really used to someone fighting him on things because he is the head of the Greek mafia now. And so he's kind of like trying to put her in her place, and she's like, you're not gonna tell me what to do. And so that, combined with their mutual attraction, leads to some very spicy scenes, and that's where the romance kind of begins. And so Nicholas, though, wants to fight it. He doesn't want to be with her. He doesn't want to, like, he doesn't want her to have that effect on him. And so he wants to push her away, but at the same time can't really see her being with someone else. And so that's where this book pretty much went. It is part of the series, so I do want to continue it eventually, but I rated this book, again, a 4 star. Now, last but not least, I read Cruel King by Rena Kent. I really read this book just because I know it's part of a series, and apparently their kids' books are even better from what I've seen. But I really want to read these just so I have a background into it. I saw Larry Reed's, that's the name of her YouTube channel, read the kids' books, and so now I'm like, okay, you know what? Let me read the adults. Let me just push through those books, and then so I can read the kids' books, because apparently those were really good. We shall see. But anyway, this book, it is a bully romance, and it's between Astrid and Levi. So these are super rich kids in Europe. I mean, their parents are like the who's who of the country. Like, you have like prime ministers or whatever. So Astrid is like this really artsy, chill girl. Like, she doesn't care about being like popular or anything. Whereas Levi, complete opposite. He's like the head of like the football team, but football as in soccer, not American football. And so he's like the popular guy. He's the guy that all the girls throw themselves at. He's the life of the party, etc., etc. So one night, Astrid, unbeknownst to her, takes a drink that happens to be roofied. So she kind of has this like moment with Levi, and nothing happens because he does realize, like, wait a second, you've never really talked to me. You don't really care about talking to me. And like the way that you're reacting to me, I can tell that you're on something. But Levi has a plan of something that he's planning on doing that night. And so he basically tells her, like, go home, go away, you know, whatever. Now, she ends up getting into this accident where she's hit by a car. And so she wants to find out who hit her, who helped her, because she, like, the last thing she remembers is someone helping her, but she doesn't know who it was. And so she wants to dig into it, but her accident is not the only thing that happened that night. And so it's in Levi's best interest for Astrid to not go around poking into like what happened that night and who hit her and who helped her. And so he basically bullies her and keeps trying to bully her into not digging into it. But she is not someone who's going to just say, yes, Levi, whatever you say. So she is over here painting his locker, painting his car, and doing all these things back and forth. Like, he does something to her, she does something. He does something, she does something. And so all these things start to happen back and forth. And you end up finding out that, like, there's things that happen in their past that they don't know about, and a lot of the pain that they each feel is related. And again, I don't want to like say anything because I don't want to spoil anything, but I was just like, whoa, like, that's pretty crazy. But again, this book was just kind of like, it was okay, it wasn't crazy. So that's why I rated this book a 3.5 out of 4 stars. The 3.5 out of 5 stars. Oh my god, my brain's not working anymore. But anyway, I am so hot and sweaty right now, so I'm gonna turn on the air. But those are all the books that I read in this month. I have a lot of fantasy romance in my near future. I also want to read a lot of, like, I think mafia books. I'm just kind of like in the mood for stuff like that. And maybe I'll get in like a few last minute like summer reads in September. So you'll have to stay tuned for my TBR for September. But anyway, these are the books that I read. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I will see you at the next one. Bye.